This is News Talk 980 CKNW.
Well, the real estate numbers for April are out, and they're showing a continuing downward trend in activity in Greater Vancouver.
But while buying and selling has slowed down, prices really haven't dropped at all. So despite a number of actions taken by all levels of government, no surprises here. We've been talking about this. Affordability doesn't seem to be any closer for a lot of people, Linda. With more on this, let's bring you Michael Campbell, host of Canada's top-rated financial show, Money Talks.
Michael, I love talking about real estate. Let's start with a quick snapshot of these April numbers. What do you see?
Well, I mean, we did see that big decline there. We dropped 25.7% when you look at overall residential property sales, this April compared to last April. Now, last April, keep in mind, was the peak of the market. But the big dive was in single detached family homes. They were down 39%, comparing those two Aprils. The point is that last April was the peak, and we've declined closer to the 10-year historical norm.
Prices haven't budged here, though, Mike.
No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the problem is we've got a lack of supply. I mean, I'm looking at the new listings for detached and apartment properties, that kind of thing, throughout Metro Vancouver, and they're still down about 20% compared to April 2016. So you still got some demand, but you've got a dramatically reduced supply. That's going to keep prices up there. I mean, that's why, you're looking at about an 11% jump in prices when you just take averages, and I know that's not, perfect, but still it gives you an idea of the trend. I mean, we're at about 941,000. It's interesting to note, though, where the action is still in condos. You look at those first 3 months, this year, condo prices are up around 8.2%. Then you got townhomes about 5.3%, but single detached homes only at about 2.8% when you look throughout the region. But here's the thing, and I mean, as you say, Drex, we've been talking about this. But you know what? I mean, obviously, a price decline is good for people looking to get into the market. I mean, that's good news. But come on, we forget the 2 million people that own homes throughout BC. That rise in prices has been a godsend for a lot of people because it's had a very positive wealth-building effect, and that's a tricky thing there. The other thing I'd ask when we have all these guys running around talking about affordable prices, well, how far would the average price of a single detached home, say in Vancouver, which is what, about 1.5 in Vancouver alone, have to drop to make it affordable?
Right.
I mean, we'd need like a 30 or 40% drop. That would be a disaster. Whether you're, somebody who owns the house or you've lent the money on a mortgage, that kind of stuff. And here's the other thing that I'm not hearing that I think we should. Let's at least know the context here. If you start taking into account real estate sales and, of course, the building of real estate, but people do renos, they buy furniture, there's legal work involved, there's financing involved. That's about 40% of the BC economy, and it's a big reason why BC continues to lead the country in terms of economic growth and wage growth and a whole bunch of other, sort of financial statistics. That's why this is the point. I'm very uncomfortable with all the attacks on the demand side of the housing equation because it's going to make no difference whatsoever. I mean, let's raise taxes for people who are going to buy them and all that, more stringent mortgage eligibility rules. To me, it's scary. I mean, this is too important an industry to make that mistake. You are not going to solve affordable housing by going after demand, unless you're prepared to say we're not going to allow anyone into the province any longer. But it's incredible for me to see politician supporters who want the industry to actually decline, all in the name of affordability. And it's going to cost us a lot of jobs. I mean, some of that talk is real nonsense.
Okay, well, if we can't attack the demand, then that leaves the supply. And it's not, it's not just all about supply, it's also about the right kind of supply, too.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's why I think when they start including in the average prices those single detached homes on Point Grey Road or Shaughnessy, it's just not relevant. That's not where the affordability problem is. I'm not going to buy there, and certainly no first-time buyer is. But here's a stat that we should all memorize. I was looking at that report. It's called Metro Vancouver 2040 Residential Growth Projections. Okay, so here's the bottom line. The Lower Mainland's population is, forecast to grow something like an average of 30,000 new residents every year. The bottom line is they're estimating that by 2041, we're going to have 1.2 million more people into this region. They say that translates to about 574,000 needed additional housing units, by that time. Well, the same report says right now we're not even close. We don't have stuff on the drawing board, new developments, anything is even close. We're about 20% of that capacity. So obviously, you've got that increased demand from people coming in, but we have a major supply shortage to meet that demand. I mean, obviously that would, certainly equals higher prices over the long term.
So is that going to be bad news for affordability, Mike?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, One of the things I'll say is that we have this tendency, Drex, to think that governments can solve everything. Like they've got this secret magic policy wand, and it might, in this case, we're talking affordable housing. Well, they can't. Unless you're prepared, as I said earlier, to actually say, no, we can't have any more people moving in. But that's not going to happen. So we've got to look at the supply. And that's where I think governments can at least help ease this problem. And, because we've got a provincial election, so we're talking about provincial stuff. But you know what? You've got to look at that municipal level. Instead of helping the problem, a lot of times they're making the problem worse. And I'm going to start with Vancouver. I'm not sure if you guys caught that report last week by the Fraser Institute,
right.
But very consistent with other reports I've seen. They chronicled the cost that municipal governments add to the price of a new home. And if we're going to talk about affordability, we better start with that. Vancouver's got levying and rezoning fees and demolition fees, environmental levies, and so much more. But you know what? The bottom line, they estimate it adds about $78,000 to the price of a new unit. That's your starting point. Surrey's about $52,000 in added costs. Richmond's about $41,000 in added costs. Well, obviously that plays big time into affordability. And here's the other thing, and we haven't heard this on the provincial election campaign, and we should have, which is why I think a lot of the talk there is BS. You got to start with that. But here's the thing. When it comes to increasing supply, think about this, baby. It takes 21 months to get through the approval process for new homes in Vancouver. West Van's not far behind. They got like a year and a half to get it through. Now, some municipalities are doing a lot better. I'm looking at Langley. They get their projects approved in under 2 months. Pitt Meadows and New West are still doing pretty well when you add up time for approval and the added cost to a home. But you know what? We've got to recognize it's a constant growth in population, and we've got to do what we can to mitigate it. It's not going to solve it. This is too popular. If you want affordable housing, 100-mile house is available.
Michael Campbell, going to be back on your radio Saturday morning with Money Talks on News Talk 980 CKNW. Mike, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Vancouver's News, Vancouver's Talk. This is News Talk 980 CKNW.